Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome to this data warehousing and data mining course. Today I will be discussing about planning and project management regarding a data warehouse. Well, a data warehouse is a very involved task, right? So it's a major task, it's a major change in your organization. So planning and developing a data warehouse is not a trivial activity. So before you start or embark on a journey to develop a data warehouse, you need to be very certain of certain aspects so that you can start the planning and project management phase of a data warehouse with the required seriousness and zeal. Because developing a data warehouse is a very mammoth or a huge project, inadequate planning or lack of management could result in failure and inability to develop the proper data warehouse. Or in many cases, a data warehouse might be developed, but it might not be useful, which is almost as good as a failure in developing a data warehouse. So when you're planning your data warehouse, the first and foremost question is to determine if your company really needs a data warehouse. Well, I discussed with you before that developing a data warehouse is not a trivial issue. You need a very careful planning and proper project management because it is a complex task. So you need to determine wholeheartedly and with proper seriousness whether your company really needs a data warehouse. For example, your company's culture and your company's setup, does it allow or is it comfortable with having a data warehouse? And to help yourself, you need to develop a criteria for assessing the value expected from a data warehouse. Definitely, if you can ascertain the value expected from your data warehouse, you can justify your data warehouse and you can create seriousness in the data warehouse development process. And once you find out that you need a data warehouse and you are willing to develop a data warehouse, you have to be certain about where the data is going to come from and even whether you have all the needed data. In fact, you need to be certain where the data is going to be coming from and where the data would be stored. And in fact, you should have all the knowledge about all the needed data. That is an important point. So we can now look at the key issues which should be discussed and which should be managed before you plan and before you start your data warehouse, right? So planning for your data warehouse begins with the thorough consideration of the key issues. And what are the key issues? These are the key issues. Let's examine them one by one. Value and expectations, right? This is an important aspect. You want to find out when you would be making a data warehouse what value it would add to your organization. In fact, you should know the value it would add to the organization, because if you know this thing, you are able to convince the managers and the top management to have a data warehouse. And you must be convinced of the expectations that are expected from the data warehouse. Would the data warehouse increase business productivity? Would the data warehouse help the executives make good decisions? And would the data warehouse be helpful in increasing the market share of the company? So these things should be considered. They're very important aspects. Then of course you should take care of the risk assessment, right? And risk assessment means what is the loss for your organization if you don't go for a data warehouse? Because data warehouse is a good investment, is a fairly huge investment, and it's a complex task. So you must convince yourself and the management that if you don't go for the data warehouse, what you would be losing, right? Would it be less market share? Would it be less sales? Whatever. So this is an important aspect. After that, you can decide whether you want to go top down or you want to go bottom up. Remember we discussed about data warehouse and data marts. Data marts are smaller versions of data warehouse, right? So we have the data warehouse, which is a corporate level big data store, and it might be connected to smaller data marts. A good example is that we have a big corporation, right? Big company, right? But we might have data marts for smaller departments of the company. For example, we might have a data mart for sales. And if we are a manufacturing company, we might have a smaller data mart for raw material purchase and management department, right? So bottom up would mean that you develop the data marts first, and using the concepts of the data mart, we might move to creating the data warehouse. And what would be top down? Top down would mean that we would develop the data warehouse first at the corporate level, considering all the departments and all the massive data. And then of course, we would be moving the data into the smaller data marts. After that, it is basically build or buy. Whether you want to build a data warehouse from scratch or you want to buy a vendor product. Of course, you won't be going for building of a data warehouse, because there are many off the shelf applications or systems that can be used for building a data warehouse, and it won't be worth the time and effort to reinvent the wheel in trying to build a data warehouse. So when you want to buy a solution, of course your budgets, your requirement of the company would be major concerns that have to be addressed. Now the next issue that we can discuss is basically whether we should go for a single vendor or we should have the best product from multiple vendors. Now again, this is an important decision, right? And basically we can appreciate the pros and cons of each approach. For example, if we go for a single vendor approach, we have a high level of integration among the tools, right? And the look and feel is constant and good. There's no learning curve, right? And of course the interfacing of the tool between the tools would be seamless because they are from a single vendor, and the tools are centrally managed. That is another advantage. And overall price might be negotiable. You might be able to negotiate based on certain version of suits. Remember how the software is sold as suits. On the other hand, if you go for best of breed, you could have certain advantages also. That means best products from the different vendors, right? You could build an environment to fit your organization, right? And there is no compromise between database and support tools. An excellent example I would give you for going best of breed setup is using the SAP systems. When SAP systems are installed and they run, SAP also includes the full business applications and full business intelligence applications as well. So for example, when you are going for SAP, right, you don't go for the database that is offered by SAP, right? The database offered by SAP is not a very high performant database. So you go for an Oracle database, because Oracle is a true enterprise level database, right? But use the other tools of SAP, like the NetWeaver, right? The NetWeaver environment, that can be done, right? So of course, when you are using the best of breed approach, there are certain advantages, right? You can use the best products, but again you should be very sure that those products would work together properly, right? There should not be any interfacing issues among the products. After that, we go to the next point, that business requirements should drive your data warehouse decision, and it should not be technology that drives the decision. Many times the system admins and even the business owners become so crazy about data warehouse that they just want to go to the data warehouse and develop them. They are very charged up with the technologies, and they think of the data warehouse as a very important technology decision that they can take. And in reality, that data warehouse might not help them more. It would only be a technology based decision by the management. So basically, a data warehouse is designed. The aim of the data warehouse, what is the aim of the data warehouse? It is to help the executives do the right decision and make the right decisions. If your data warehouse is made from the latest technology but it does not help the business executive do the decisions, it is useless. Then afterwards you must go have the top management support, right? The sponsors for the data warehouse should help you, the business executives should support you. In fact, it stems from the fact that if you can justify your value and expectations and risk assessment to the top management would be willing to support you in this. So that is the main idea. Now this is the hardest part in your data warehouse analysis and justification, right? You are going for a very big task. You are going to be developing a data warehouse, right? You are going to be spending lots and lots of money in that, right? A medium-sized data warehouse can cost lakhs and lakhs of rupees, right? So how you would justify your data warehouse, right? It's very difficult to justify if you have large costs involved in a project. So some common guidelines that can be done is, first of all, you could calculate the current technology cost to produce the applications and reports supporting strategic decision making, right? So you could analyze the current cost without the data warehouse when you want to make strategic decisions, and you can compare it with the costs that would incur after you have your data warehouse up and running. Because making a data warehouse would be sort of a capital investment, right? Once the data warehouse is there, once your OLAP applications are there, once your data mining is in place, then of course it would be a running system. So it should be treated like that. And also you could calculate the business value of the proposed data warehouse with the estimated value for profits, dividends, earnings growth, right? And you can do that, and market share growth. So you can justify, of course, that after you have the data warehouse, if you increase your market share, if you increase the profits, if you increase the dividends, the cost of the data warehouse can be borne. So what is the moral of the story? You should do a full-fledged exercise. You should identify all the components that will be affected by the proposed data warehouse and those that will affect the data warehouse. This is important, right? To create and calculate the return on investment or ROI. So without that you cannot create and you cannot calculate the correct return on investment. Now when you're going for a data warehouse project, right, this is basically the initiative for a data warehouse, and it gives us an outline for the overall plan, right, which includes of course some points about introduction, mission statement, scope, goals and objectives of the data warehouse, key issues and options, values and expectations. These are some of the headings that we've already discussed, right? Justification, executive sponsorship, implementation strategy, tentative schedule, and project authorization, right? And of course the schedule is tentative because there might be some changes and some changes in the schedule, right? Project delays are common. Now this is an important slide. It tells us basically that data warehouse projects differ from online transaction processing projects, right? OLTP are your normal transactional applications, right? And you can see it is a challenging task, right, for a project management. Which task? A data warehouse. Because you have the data acquisition phase, you have the data storage phase, and you have the information delivery phase. In data acquisition, you have a large number of sources, right? And the sources are separate or disparate, and you have different computing platforms. So you must load data from outside sources. So the data load would be huge initially, right? And data feeds, of course, you would be having this. And data integration is complex. Remember, we discussed in our previous discussion that, of course, when the data is coming from multiple sources, right? So we must carry out transformations. We must carry out data cleansing, right? We discussed the concept of ETL, right? Extract, transform, load, right? So this is a complex task, and it is very complex as compared to the online transaction processing, because processes in OLTP systems are very straightforward. Of course, in data storage, we have to store data, large volumes of data, and the data would grow rapidly. So we need parallel processing. We need data storage in staging area. We discussed staging area, right? So multiple indexes must be there. Several index files would be there. Index is a method by which we expedite the queries, right? And storage of new data types, archival of old data, compatibility with tools. These are all the complex aspects. Similarly, for information delivery, we must have several user types, right? And we must have information delivery according to the user types. For example, with the information delivery might be tailored for the executive user, it might be tailored for the manager, and so on. So queries would be stretched to limits, right? There might be multiple query types, and it should be web enabled, which is again another challenge. Multi-dimensional analysis, right? OLAP, online analytical processing functionality must be there, right? Data mining tools would be implemented, interface to the decision support system. The main idea is that these are very complex stages, right? So data warehouse projects are very different from online transaction processing projects. So how to start a data warehousing project, right? So example, if you got the approval from management, right? So you want to start your data warehousing project. Well, not quite, not that fast, right? What you need to do is you need to carry out assessment of readiness of the data warehouse in your organization. Remember that data warehouse is basically a company-wide phenomena, right? The data warehouse involves all the departments, all the stakeholders. So all the departments and all the stakeholders must be ready to adapt the data warehouse and to be comfortable with the idea of the data warehouse. And what would help us in determining this? Assessment of readiness. And who carries out the assessment of readiness? Project manager and outside expert, right? In data warehousing, feel free to hire experts for these kinds of tasks, because of course, after all, data warehousing project is a complex project. So how assessment of readiness can be done? It can be done by engaging in discussions with the executive, sponsor, users, and the potential team members to assess their readiness to the idea and its concepts, right? Again, as I told you, it's a complete effort, right? And it should be done with the consent of all the stakeholders, right? Well, the readiness assessment report that we create can serve the following purposes, right? It can lower the risk of big surprises occurring during the implementation. For example, one department is very reluctant, it becomes reluctant to go for the data warehouse, right? So that is a bottleneck. You can't move up because of that. And would provide a proactive approach to problem resolution, right? Problems could be resolved before they occur proactively. And you can reassess corporate commitment. We can review and re-identify project scope and size. So we can start with the initial project scope and size, and based on the readiness assessment report, we could change that. And we could identify the critical success factors. For example, if one department is a little slow in grasping the idea of a data warehouse and reluctant to help it. So we could focus on that department, and if that department's behavior and attitude improves, the whole development process of our data warehouse is going to be improving. And of course we must determine the training needs. So there might be some training involved in some departments. If there are some non-technical people in some department, they would need training to go along with the data warehouse. So let's look at the life cycle development approach and a data warehouse. So as an IT developer and a system developer, we are all familiar with the SDLC approach, System Development Life Cycle Approach, which begins with the process of requirement analysis. Then we proceed to the design, then the construction, then we go for the testing phase, and finally we go for the implementation phase. That's basically the classical system development life cycle. But what about the life cycle approach in data warehouse? In data warehouse projects, a modified SDLC approach would have to be used, and a classical waterfall model won't do. What do we mean by that? What is the waterfall model? One phase is completed fully, then we go to the next phase. The next phase completed fully, the next one. After the full completion, next one. After the full completion, next one. Well, surprisingly, when we are developing a data warehouse, right, we might need to iterate between the phases. So we would iterate to the different phases of development until we have refined the design and the project ends. Well, this situation is shown in figure 4.3. We start with the project, right? We go for the data acquisition phase, complete data storage, information delivery. Then again, we might have some refinement on data storage. We might have some refinement on data acquisition. Again, we might have some refinement on data storage, information delivery. Again, some refinement on information delivery, data storage, until the project ends. So we are iterating between the phases, and that is the difference, and that is not waterfall model of development, right? Again, why are we iterating? Because data warehouse is a complex project, and we might refine our stages once we have designed each of the stages until the project ends and we have a working data warehouse. So the data warehousing phases are shown in figure 4.5, and we can see we start with the project planning, requirements definition. Again, the design now, as you can see, encompasses the data acquisition, data storage, information delivery, and construction, and we might iterate as I discussed before. And after we have iterated, we go for the deployment and then the maintenance of the data warehouse. So now we discuss the most important aspect in any project development, right? And what is that important aspect? The project team. So the success of your team is the success of your project, right? As it is said. So it's basically all teamwork, like all kinds of different projects, and in specialty all kinds of software projects. So as in any type of project, the success of a data warehouse project lies on the shoulders of the project team. True enough. A data warehouse project is similar to other software projects is that it is human intensive, right? So humans are developing the project. So it is really human intensive activity with lots of human communication, even communication between the team members, and also communication between the team members and the stakeholders. So it's human intensive, and I would like to add human communication intensive activity as well. So organizing the project team for a data warehouse project has to do with matching diverse roles with proper skills and levels of experience. So we have people, we have the roles in our project, people have the skills, and people have the experience levels, right? So good project team management deals with looking at the role that we want to assign, and then we're looking to the person's skills and the level of experience. Again, it seems like a simple task, but it is a complex task indeed. So what is the importance of the project team and the well-being of the project team? This is given by this fact, this point. Two things can break a project: complexity overload and responsibility ambiguity. So two important terms, right? Complexity overload and responsibility ambiguity. What do we mean by responsibility ambiguity? You are given a responsibility, you are given a role, but you are not sure what to do, what really you want to do, or what really you have to do, right? And the other is complexity overload. And complexity overload can be thought of as being dependent on responsibility ambiguity, right? If I am a person who has not been given the proper role which matches my skill set and my experience, definitely the task that I have been given would be increasing in complexity for me, right? And I would be very broken in that aspect. And since I am broken, my project would break. So what is the bottom line? When the right person on the team with the right type of skills and with the right level of experience does an individual task, this person is really resolving the complexity issue, right? If my skills and experience is very matched to the role that I have to work on, so that won't be very complex for me. So the complexity won't increase, right? And I would be really resolving the complexity issue. So this is the beautiful line, right? This is the beautiful thing that should be there. And what does it say? In a properly constituted project team, each person is given specific responsibilities of a particular role based on his or her skill and experience level. If you do that in such a team, there is no confusion or ambiguity about responsibilities. So this is what we should try to aim for. So how we organize the project team? So a good starting point is to list all the project challenges and specialized skills needed. So you note them down. Your list may run like this: planning, defining data requirements, defining types of queries, data modeling, tool selection, physical database design, source data extraction, data validation and quality control, setting up the metadata framework, and so on. The metadata is the most important aspect in a data warehouse. Most important. I can just say that it is the heart and soul of a data warehouse. And metadata is basically a really nice idea. It basically tells us about everything about the data, right? The source of the data, the type of the data, the destination of the data, just to name a few aspects. So it's a complete framework that guides and that forms the backbone of your data warehouse. If your metadata has been properly formulated, your data warehouse would function very smoothly, and vice versa if it is not the case. So now we are in the next step of organizing the project team. We use the list of skills and anticipated challenges. We prepare a list of team roles needed to support the development work. So after the challenges and skills needed, we create the roles. So individual persons may now be assigned to the team roles. In a limited budget, a single person may be assigned multiple roles. So this is the option for you. But again, the roles that you assign must be in line with the skill set of the person and the experience of the person. So in many data warehouse projects, the team roles are synonymous with the job titles given to the team members. Let's see what it means. A short list is shown in figure 4.6. Roles also known as job title: executive sponsor, project director, project manager, right? Organizational change manager, data warehouse architect, data acquisition developer, just to name a. Everyone can appreciate this short list of roles. Again, the idea is you need not use all these roles, and you might not use people for these roles. It is an exhaustive list, right? Your project might include less roles than they are shown over here. And as I told before, one person might be able to carry out different roles.